Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to day 2 of the INMM meeting. I hope you had a great first day. I have a couple of quick reminders before we launch right into our plenary panel for the day. First of all, we want to remind you that we have 2 separate mixers happening this evening. The first is the Women of Mass Distinction at the Kimpton Hotel from 6 to 7:30. This required pre-registration, so you invited folks should go over there to the Kimpton. And then following that, or overlapping with that, will be our regular INMM mixer. It'll be here from 7 to 9 on the 2nd floor in Mount Hood. So as you exit the elevators, head to the right. If you exit the escalators, head to the right. Look for where all the buzz is happening. And then tomorrow evening, we want to remind you that we're going to have at 5 p.m. here in this room the annual business meeting. So please make time to come out and help drive the future of the organization by attending the annual business meeting. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's plenary panel, Jill Mannion from the Office of Radiological Security. Jill.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jill Mannion, and I will be the moderator for today's plenary panel, Radiological Security in a Changing Global Landscape. I'm here today on behalf of Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and the U.S. Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration's Office of Radiological Security. It's my first time at INMM, and it has been an absolute delight to see current colleagues and meet new faces. I also have to say it's quite the honor as a first-timer to host a plenary session on the future of radiological security. I would like to get started by introducing Ms. Kristen Hirsch, who will provide our opening remarks. Ms. Hirsch is the Director of the Office of Radiological Security within the U.S. Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration's Office of Global Materials Security, a position she has held since March of 2019. ORS works domestically in the United States and internationally in over 100 countries to secure radiological sources in use and storage, remove disused sources and securely store or disposition them, and to encourage the use of alternative, non-isotopic technologies to achieve permanent risk reduction. Ms. Hirsch.
Thank you, Jill. I want to welcome you again to the plenary. Thank you for attending. I do see a lot of folks standing around the entryway. Please make your way in. Lots of room on this side, and as always, lots of room in the front. So again, welcome and thank you. As Jill provided a little bit of an overview of our office, I'm going to provide a little more in-depth information about radioactive sources. They have many benefits and are used worldwide every single day in areas such as healthcare, science, and industry. And our goal in our office is to ensure that they are secure and remain available for peaceful uses. High-activity radioactive sources are often found in spaces that are considered to be soft targets, meaning they are open to the public, places like universities and hospitals. In the wrong hands, these same materials that are used daily for peaceful purposes could quickly cause significant consequences, including billions of dollars worth of damage, social and psychological impacts, and the potential loss of life. So how do we address radioactive source security in a world that is constantly changing with an ever-evolving threat? We need to be agile ourselves, welcoming new ideas, innovation, and creativity, and supporting and engaging all people, listening to all voices, and actively seeking new ideas and new perspectives. I'm very lucky to work with a broad team of diverse professionals from many different backgrounds who bring unique experiences and perspectives to this challenging work. We've already met Jill from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. We have 3 panelists who are joining us today. We have Emiliano Santiago Rojas, also from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, Camille Tisler from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, and Mike Rowland from Sandia National Laboratories. Excuse me. We will hear from the panel of experts in radiological security. We will learn about their career path and their journey that brought them here today, and what opportunities and challenges they see ahead of them. I hope you will gain some energy and inspiration from this panel discussion, whether you are new to radiological and nuclear security or a seasoned professional. So thank you again for joining us, and I'm going to turn it back over to Jill.
Thank you, Kristen, for the lovely kickoff. So the goal of our session today is to hear from a panel of experts who will share how and why they got into the field of radiological security, where they see this field moving into the future, and what keeps them engaged in this constantly evolving arena. As Kristen mentioned, our first panelist is Mr. Emiliano Santiago Rojas. Emiliano is a senior electrical engineer with over 20 years of experience in electronics design, radiation detection, wireless communications, embedded systems, and accelerometer applications. He has contributed to multiple technology development efforts, field installations, and technology transfers in the industry. He uses his experience as an engineer, an immigrant from San Juan Mixtepec, Oaxaca, Mexico, and as an Army veteran to positively impact the world. He also actively engages with the next generation of scientists and engineers, supporting diversity and inclusiveness in the community. Emiliano, can you share a little about your path to a career in radiological security and what you find to be the most exciting part of your job?
Yes. Thank you, Jill, for the question. Good morning, everyone. Buenos días a todos. Takuni, Disandi Kwabani, as in Mixteco. I hope everybody is having a good morning so far. I'm excited to be here with you guys at this conference because I get to meet so far incredible people who are hungry for knowledge and eager to advance in the nuclear security. To be honest, I can't believe I'm in this conference and to be sitting here with my colleagues, incredible colleagues, speakers, and excited to be here. And I wanted to share a little bit with you guys the beginning of my path and how I started to be here with you guys. At the beginning, my path wasn't clear and full of challenges. As an indigenous member of the Mixteco tribe from the state of Oaxaca, Mexico, becoming an electrical engineer at the National Laboratory has been an interesting journey. One of my biggest challenges in life has been believing in myself, knowing that I can do it. Despite of this challenge, I was able to find a way to start my career in radiological security. My path to a career in radiological security started back in 1998 after returning from U.S. Army basic training. After returning from basic training, I began my career as an electrical engineer, then eventually, luckily, got hired at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in 2000. I started developing and working in sensor integration systems such as temperature, humidity, accelerometer, and radiation detector for military and commercial applications. In 2014, I began developing a radiation detector for the Office of Radiological Security and successfully developed a radiation tracking system in collaboration with my hardware, firmware, software, and mechanical engineers. Now we have a tracking technology called Mobile Source Transit Security, or MSTS, system capable of tracking critical mobile radiation sources. My path does not stop here, and I continue to incorporate new security technology to secure radiation sources. I want to reach out to this community, full of experts, and to learn about what is needed and how I can contribute more in this area. I also continue working with the next generation of engineers, mentoring, providing necessary guidance from my experience and my journey, so that one day they can take over and continue this important and necessary responsibility. Now, for the second part of the question, the most exciting part of my job and what keeps me pushing forward is having the privilege of providing basic radiation security tools such as the mobile source transit security system to keep our community safe from radiation, from unwanted radiation sources. I'm excited to know that I'm making a real impact to my community, to my future generation, and for the world. So, thank you.
Thank you, Emiliano. And you're doing a session this week on the MSTS for those of you who are interested. Can you share-
That's right. Me and my colleague Ashley, we're doing a session on Wednesday at 2 p.m. So if you guys are interested, you guys can attend to that.
Perfect, thanks. Our second panelist is Ms. Camille Tisler. Camille is an international security analyst focused on radiological security at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, where she leads radiological security efforts in East Asia, Europe, and Africa. She has previously worked as a researcher on national security topics and served in international humanitarian aid. Camille has a master's degree from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. Camille, your background differs rather significantly from Emiliano's. Could you share a little bit about how you developed a career in radiological security and what excites you for the future in this field?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. And yes, please, no one let me near a circuit ever. Yes, my background is a bit different. I actually started my career here in Portland. I did a brief stint in local government, and then a very, very brief stint in the private sector, which I quickly realized was not for me. And then ended up actually at an international NGO that provided humanitarian aid medical care for refugees in refugee camps all around the world. That was my first experience working in the international affairs area. And while the work was very meaningful, it was also very difficult. Humanitarian aid is a difficult industry. Working for NGOs, I'm sure many of you know, can be quite difficult. But I did it for several years, and then decided for some reason that if I just had more education in it, I would like it more. So I went off to get my master's degree at the Fletcher School, initially with a focus on humanitarian affairs. I think I lasted about 3 months with that focus. Really quickly pivoted into national security and negotiations, and then really focused in on nuclear security, which was a real shock to everyone, including me. But I just found the problem set so interesting, but not terribly related to my background in humanitarian aid in the medical space. And so when I was first hired at Lawrence Livermore, I was doing some research for a different part of the lab, and then transitioned into working for the Office of Radiological Security. And I initially thought I was getting hired to work on nuclear security, but they were like, "We just need you to get this project to the finish line. It'll be just a few months." And I was like, "Sure, no problem." Some of you are laughing. I feel like many of us have been in this situation before. But it wasn't just that I got drawn in. I loved the problem set, and I found that my background was strangely applicable, because I knew what it was like to work with hospitals and in tough circumstances, and see things from different sides. And so that's maybe what I'm most excited about for the future of radiological security, for my future in it, is it's such a unique problem set. As Kristen mentioned in the intro, we have similar concerns in the radiological material space as we do in the nuclear material space, though obviously on slightly different scale. But our problem set has to be solved in a place that we have to keep accessible, open to the public, and balancing a lot of competing concerns, because while my major concern might be for the radiological security of material, the doctor I'm working with, main concern is for the health of his patients, and we have to find a place that works for both of us. And I just find that sort of puzzle box problem set really, really compelling. And it makes me feel really good about the work that I do. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you, Camille. Our third panelist is Mr. Michael Rowland. Michael Rowland is a principal member of the technical staff at Sandia National Laboratories, where he focuses on cybersecurity for physical protection systems for high-activity radioactive materials. Prior to this role, he fulfilled and succeeded in key roles within nuclear security and has guided efforts to develop international consensus publications, specialized training courses for global audiences, national insight cybersecurity assessments, and advancing IAEA-coordinated research efforts in incident response and cybersecurity of radiation detection systems. Mr. Rowland is a professional engineer of Ontario and a certified information systems security professional. He obtained his Bachelor's of Engineering from Ryerson University in Toronto and Master's of Information Security from Royal Holloway, University of London. So, Mr. Rowland, you have experience with both nuclear security and radiological security. Can you tell us a little bit more about the history of your career and share any career highlights?
Thank you very much. So, my story basically started at the nuclear power plant on the shores of Lake Ontario, just outside of Toronto. And then about 2 months after starting, there was the horrible events of 9/11, right? And that was sort of my first insights into how much the world had changed. So in Canada regulations, we didn't have armed police officers or armed guards on site. So Canadians felt that having weapons to response forces would only increase the risk. And so through a process of about 6 to 7 years, we were able to gradually change the regulations, which required an act of parliament, and be able to arm our response forces on the site. And so we had to do many activities to put in underwater barriers, upgrade our fences, and it was hundreds of millions of dollars at both of our sites in Pickering and Darlington. And then what happened is in 2008, we got a one-sentence letter from the regulator saying, "We need you to think about cybersecurity." And most of our leadership said, we don't need to worry about cybersecurity. We've been operating these plants that are highly digital technology for 40 or 50 years, and therefore it's going to be like Y2K, and it's just going to disappear. We're going to do it once and done. And so the big thing I've noticed in my career is just say yes, trust yourself, trust the people around you to actually support you. And so over the next 5 years, we put in place the first cybersecurity program at the Ontario Power Generation, the company, and we would still get people after 5 years say, do I really have to do this? Right? What is the one test for cybersecurity? And so a lot of the role early on was actually to educate, right? Continually going and saying, I understand the pressures you have, right? I understand how valuable this is to you, right? How can we make this, by working together, an optimal solution for everyone, where everybody wins? And so during the first program, we were able to sort of, raise the tide and lift all boats. But obviously, we hadn't succeeded in providing for that proactive, how do we get better as a community? And so the program was put in place in 2013, and then I saw a job. It was from the IEA. It was, hey, we want a cybersecurity specialist. And so I applied for the IEA, and I happened to get it. So I was in the IEA for 5 years, and one of my first meetings, there was a gentleman called Chul Wan, and he was from the CNSC. And he goes, oh, you're from OPG. Did you get the letter I sent you on cybersecurity? and I'll tell you, that one sentence letter was probably the most impactful letter I've ever received in my life. And the biggest thing was people said, you've done cybersecurity or something, do you think you can take this on? And I think it was similar to what Camille was saying about, well, I switched into nuclear security, but I wasn't too sure. And that was the same history that I had, right? And I was at the IEA and being described as a cybersecurity expert, one of the few at that time. And I was like, who do I phone? And so there was a gentleman, his name's Scott Hiltz, and he actually got an accommodation from our prime minister for being one of the leaders. I phoned him up from Vienna and I said, Scott, I saw you present once at a conference. You won't know me, but I think I need your help. And he said, what do you need? And that began a major effort at the IEA to not only improve nuclear security, but also, as we were finishing up on nuclear security, starting to get into radiological security. And so that community that we've built up has been really proactive in the international standards and publication guidance to really sort of help the junior staff, right? To help those that have said yes and don't know who to turn to. And what we're seeing now is most nuclear power plant countries, most mature countries, have actually started to revise their standards. We're starting to become more proactive, but it's tremendously expensive to develop that capability, that capacity. And when you look at radiological security, the impact is way more, right? Yes, we need electricity production from our nuclear power plants, but we need food sterilization, we need blood irradiators, we need teletherapy device, right? As Camille pointed out, teletherapy devices help to treat communicable illnesses like cancer. My wife, she worked at the Program of Action Cancer Therapy, and she said the major cause of death in sub-Saharan Africa of women 18 to 40 is cancer. They don't have access to cancer treatment. And so what I find so invigorating about the future is that my 10 years of helping with nuclear security, now we have a different problem for radiological security. How do we optimize our approaches? How do we make sure that, low middle income countries can actually implement effective cybersecurity, not to give you cybersecurity, but to give their societies access to that healthcare, to that cancer treatment, and the societal benefits of use of radiological sources in a meaningful way. And that's why I sort of look at this as probably one of the biggest challenges within my career, to try to really focus on how do we enable optimized cybersecurity without saying just hire more cybersecurity experts than you would doctors and nurses. And so I'm really excited. There's a tremendous community that's been fostered both within ORS but also at the IEA. And so I believe, in the next 10 years, we're going to have many solutions to which we have yet not known be implemented. So it's a tremendously exciting time.
Thank you for your comments. I think we can see here, based on our three subject matter experts, that everybody comes from a wide variety of backgrounds in radiological security. I don't think there's any type of a prescribed path, and I think if you pinged any of my colleagues sitting here today, you would find that we all have vastly different backgrounds. And so one of the things we want to highlight is that if you are interested in this field, or you have an interest in learning more about radiological security, there is no one-step process for getting into this arena. So I'll turn it back over to the panel here. What advice would you give to someone who might be interested in this career path, whether it's someone who's just starting down their career journey, or perhaps someone who's looking for a new challenge or opportunity?
I'll kick it off. Well, one of the advices that I would give to someone who's starting in this career or in this area is that, just believe of what you're doing, and that you are making an impact. And even though you're starting maybe in a different area, you are able to focus and find, areas that you may want, that really, want to or enjoy doing. And so that's one of the advice I would give to someone who wants to start, young generation that coming up. Just don't be afraid to go for it. Take it, run with it, and do it. So that's my advice.
Thank you.
So as I've mentioned about Scott Hiltz, don't be afraid to ask for help. There are many people when I present at conferences that come up to me and say, how do I get started, right? What book should I be reading? Who should I be following? And so one thing you'll find is that, people that have really contributed to the community want to pay it forward, right? They want to help out, right? Don't be afraid. Say hello. Say, I'm really trying to do X, right? I'm really trying to improve working for a hospital in cybersecurity, but I don't know how to do it. And so over many years, I sort of follow many people at different parts of their career and sort of say, hey, what's your challenge? Okay, here's a book, right? Oh, here's somebody that might be able to help you with your solution. And I always believe that, if you make the connections, the people that have those connections will then make further connections. It's sort of like a force multiplier, right? So for me, the answers and the community is really supportive of advancement of individuals to then be able to contribute, 10, 20 years, 30 years into the future.
Similar to both my colleagues, and I would really echo what Mike said about reaching out to people in the field. I think that's really important. And most of us don't bite. But also I think there's so much space in this space, and there's so much room for a variety of expertise. If this is an area that's interesting to you, I guess my advice would be really basic, like get on the ORS website and look at all the different programs, look at the 3 areas, protect, remove, reduce, figure out what you're most interested in and start educating yourself on that topic, because we are a mosaic of niche expertise. So there's a place for a lot of different types of expertise in this area, because we need all of those things.
And I would like to add to that, during these couple of days that we've been, interacting with people, there's a lot of senior staff here, senior colleagues, and they are, really enjoyable and able to provide information. I met someone on Saturday or Sunday, and man, full of advices, like, wow, I want to connect, I'm going to connect to this person. And so there are people out there that wants to help.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I am going to open up the questions to the audience. So feel free to start thinking about what you may want to ask our experts over here. But I think based on the conversation that we've had today, we've seen that radiological security in the field has grown over the past 20, 30 years. There's been significant advancements. Our program has grown significantly with new directions and new goals and things like that. So my question to you is, how do you see radiological security continuing to evolve or change into the future?
So definitely for me, there's a tremendous amount of work on cybersecurity.
True.
Right? But the goal is not cybersecurity in itself, right? The goal is in cybersecurity in enabling the society benefits of use of radiological sources, right? That is the number one goal. And sometimes, as a cyber expert, we sort of lose it, right? We don't understand, we don't empathize with, don't put a password on that, because then I'll have to enter that 60 times a day. And so then I'll just create, password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And so we really have to sort of understand their sort of psychology and in a way of how they want to use the technology. And it is getting better, right? It's getting worse in the sense that, a single piece of software can take out the global flights and hotels, right? That's sort of a bad example, but cybersecurity can also, make sure that those things don't happen, right? We want to make sure that cybersecurity is sort of seamless, right? That you don't even notice it, and therefore it's sustainable. That's the biggest question is, for my nuclear power plant experience, there's only 3 that started the program, and now there's 20 people full-time, right, on cybersecurity. Well, it makes sense if you have reactors, 12 reactors that are revenue $1 million a day that they're operating. so you can afford that. But a lot of the places that ORS supports, they can't support 20 cybersecurity experts. And so the research into using new techniques like artificial intelligence, right? How we can use, ways of automating different defensive structures and how we enable response for cybersecurity is a tremendously valuable focus for research, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to have cybersecurity, but at a reasonable cost, right? Something that can be sustained. And right now, there's not a lot of solutions sitting on the shelf that we can just pull off and apply within this domain.
Anyone else?
I think that there's going to be a lot of evolution in this space in the coming years. Looking at the broad geopolitical and security situation of the world, I think we're going to be called upon to answer a new problem set while still maintaining all of the security principles for the problem set that we've been trying to solve for the last 20 some years. And I think that it's, again, going to require an even more diverse set of expertise and perspectives than the first stage of this work has. So I think there's going to be actually quite a lot of change in the coming years.
And I think I agree with Camille, the evolution that's coming, I think it is, the world is changing. Every day the world is different. And I think we have to be able to run with that path, be able to evaluate ourselves and the security that we do to provide in the nuclear security area. And, I don't know if Adam is here. I heard Adam the other day giving a session. I really enjoyed that because there was a new perspective of how we can do things. And, I think that's something that we can apply, into this area. And I'm one of those persons that I hate changes. I like something really stable, and that's it, right? But incorporating changes, in a unnoticed is really important, and be able to do that or accommodate in that area is very important, I think. So the future is that, to be able to have this multicultural environment where everybody can collaborate and be able to apply what we know and make a better future in this area.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you all for the comments and the questions here. Okay, so I will open up the floor to any questions from the audience. I think there's 2 microphones on each side. If anybody has any questions for our panelists about what we've discussed or radiological security in general.
Thanks so much. It was great hearing about all of your different backgrounds. I have a couple of questions. I was wondering if you could tell us about maybe one of the more meaningful, activities or events or engagements you've been a part of over your career. Or another question might be if you could tell us, nobody gets here by themselves. And so if you can think of one person or one experience that was really meaningful in helping to advance your career, because I think that's sort of a foundational part of networks like this, is really helping each other. So I was going to see if you could speak to one or either of those. Thanks.
So I'll address the question on who helped get you here. For me, I think it's quite a lot of people. But that value of reaching out and of using the network of more senior colleagues. When I was first hired at the lab, as I mentioned, I was hired as a researcher, and I was working for the Center for Global Security Research, a fantastic place if any of you are interested in working there. At the time, I was being mentored by someone named Wes Spain. I don't know if you're familiar with Wes, but he was kind of a pillar of Lawrence Livermore. He'd been there for a long time. He'd run several programs across the lab. And just knew everyone. And so when I first saw the listing for the job I do now, it was, little note for Livermore's HR, it was just terrible. It was the most vague, nondescript job description I had ever seen. I was like, I don't know what this is or if I'm interested, and I have no idea who I'd be working for. So I called Wes and I was like, look, I think maybe I'd like to do this job, but honestly, I'm not sure. I don't know who I'd be working for. I don't really know what it is. Can you help me? And it's just the most vague question ever. And Wes was like, absolutely, give me a few days. Comes back, he knows exactly what the job is. He knows which program it's in. He knows who the hiring manager is. And he's like, she used to work for me. Do you want me to set up an informational interview so you can learn more? And I was like, yes, thank you. Also, I'm your disciple forever. And so having people like that, and reaching out, even when it feels a little bit awkward, those people want to help you. And Wes, goodness, he retired like 3 months later. If I hadn't asked then, it was sort of a now or never sort of situation. But it was a really good lesson to me in like, ask for the help, because people want to help you.
So I'll address the other question about something significant. It's actually something I didn't actually get to see the end of, because then Rodney Buskin took it over. But it was the IE Coordinated Research Project. So when we started the IE Coordinated Research Project, we had 17 institutions, and they basically had 1 or 2 researchers, right? That was it. And what happened was one day I was in Germany, and the University of Magdeburg said, for years, we've never been able to get any students to be interested in nuclear at all, right? Germany was really anti-nuclear at that point. And they said, now we have people sort of beating down the door trying to get into this research project. Because what had happened is the initial 20, 25 plus researchers ended up being about 92 at the end, right? And so seeing how, organic that growth was, and how we had built up this community essentially from nothing, right? Just, me and a few people essentially into something that's been sustained, right? Yesterday there was a panel on the new CRP. It's almost, 60% the same people. And what I find is that, once you have enough mass, that community continues to expand, and now it's directly impacting and benefiting the radiological security, right? That community we formed, focused on nuclear power plants, is now moving into radiological security, moving into material and regulatory control. And so that sort of initial startup to what it is today is something I'm really sort of proud about. That's something I really find really valuable to how I sort of view what I did at the IEA and the community that came from it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. You want to conclude, John?
One of the biggest, I think one of the questions is that the impact that I discovered was when I heard that mobile radiation sources can be used in a dirty bomb. I was like, wow, no way. This is so dangerous. It really opened my eyes on what's out there and what kind of danger we can face, if something would happen. So that was like the wow moment for me. And working in technologies to be able to, help that has really, or I use that, impact to be able to, develop a better technology for the future.
Perfect. Is there anyone else?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for this panel session. It's been very interesting. I'm Susan Pepper from Brookhaven National Laboratory. My question is from the perspective of the INMM. We started a series of webinars recently in the last year that have been pretty successful, and I'm wondering, in your line of work, are there any specific topics that you'd love to see us have a webinar on to discuss it with the international community?
I have one, and I know, so I was actually at the Public Policy and Nuclear Threats workshop the last 2 weeks before this, and I know some of those folks are in the audience. And so that really informs this. I really think that the basics of physical protection and physical security are something that are often glossed over in this space unless you're a security professional. But they're relevant to everyone. Everyone should at least know what their basic physical protection system is and what their responsibilities within it are. And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough.
Yeah, and I'll just add, obviously, I've got the cybersecurity angle, but what we found really effective for physical protection is just, if you have a 10-slide deck, you just add one on cybersecurity to say, what is the worst that could happen? What are the risks from cyber attack, how it would affect everything that you depend upon for the physical protection system. And so it's making sure that cyber is, an important piece, but a very small part of it, just to get the learner to actually understand, what could happen, what are the consequences, and how likely is it? And it's just a single slide, usually at the end of the slide deck, and we found them to be very positive in the way that they, address sort of this combined security problem, this one security issues that we have with cyber and physical. Obviously, they're interrelated and dependent on one another.
For me, one of the topics that I think it would be excellent would be, yesterday I attended that diversity and inclusive session, and I think that's really, every time I attend a session like that, it always new information. I think if we can incorporate that more into webinars and stuff like that, it would help out the community or the colleagues to be able to feel more at home and incorporate it as part of this organization. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, yes, please.
Safa Murad from American University of Beirut in Lebanon. I was wondering now, I'm really impressed how people are interested in nuclear security and radiological security, but I was wondering how to replicate any system that has been already developed into countries that they really don't take security into a higher level, and how to go up to next level and how to approach them in order to convince them in going and focusing more on this very interesting topic. Thank you.
Well, from my experience, as I talked about, it was driven by the regulator, right? And so what happened with that regulation, eventually it establishes sort of the initial champions, right? The 4 or 5 people that essentially drive that from the first step to the second to the third. And then over time, those 3 to 5 people become a much larger community, right? You can't just sort of establish capacity immediately. And so for us, what I've seen in my career is that it's very regulatory driven. The problem with regulation for radiological security is that a lot of countries are looking at their nuclear regulation and saying, how can we adapt it for radiological security? And it doesn't fit the resources that are available. And so this is a big challenge that a lot of research is going into to say, how do we develop a new optimized approach? And a lot of this is using models and simulators and also, hardware in the loop testing to sort of have people understand how to mock up systems and make physical protection systems cyber secure and also able to provide the functions of protecting those radiological sources.
I would probably recommend leaning on the IAEA. There are so many missions that member states can request. And one of the more successful models for this that I've seen is in advance of like an INSSP, doing a pre-workshop, not with the working level folks who will participate in the INSSP, but actually bringing together like heads of ministries and having the IAEA tell them how important this is. Because sometimes I think that outside perspective can help you get a little more traction.
My answer to that is Camille. win the people's heart. You know, like, I interact with partners of Camille, and it's like, oh, she's a good person. You know, like, yes, you know, exactly. You know, so follow Camille's example.
Okay, perfect. I see we have one more question. We are like right at time. I'll let you ask the question. If anybody is scooting out to a next session, we can do that. Oh, and I'm getting the cutoff. So what I'm going to offer is that you can come up and chat with our panelists after the conclusion of this. But thank you all for attending today. It was lovely to see so many faces bright and early this morning. And let's give a round of applause for our panelists today. Thank you.